Hey, Crestwood, happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are doing well today. What a blessing it is to be able to come to you and share this devotional with you for this Wednesday, August 26th. Hope you're doing well as you navigate the grief around Dolly Parton's death. I've seen so many expressions of gratitude, of appreciation for who she was, and what a loss for a lot of people. And certainly, I am thankful for the witness she was to God's grace and God's shining light in this world, and certainly pray for her family. But I bring you this devotional today, and the devotional it comes from this conference I mentioned I was at this past weekend. I was presenting a session on Thriving Church. Another person, Dr. Ray Kareem, was presenting on grief and change in the church. Pretty heavy subject, but such a needed subject. It took us back to talking about the pandemic and all the changes that were taking place. But honestly, the church is changing all the time. I preached on that a couple weeks ago, that the church has to be changing in order to stay relevant with our times. And every person who comes into the church changes us as a congregation because they bring in their own gifts and their own perspective and their own lived experiences. And I thought Dr. Kareem had such an interesting way of talking about how we negotiate change in the church and in our lives. And she said there's really 3 steps. When we are facing a change, especially one maybe that we struggle with, she said there are 3 steps that we need to be aware of. The first step, she says, is to acknowledge that things are changing. As much as we might want things to stay the same in our lives, we have to acknowledge that something is changing. A relationship is ending, or something at work is changing, or our responsibilities are changing. Our neighborhood is changing. There's changing on all around us. So the first thing is, don't ignore it. To say, yes, I know this is changing. The second thing she said to do is admit how the change is making you feel. To admit the anxiousness, to admit the fear, to admit the anger, whatever it is that you're feeling around that change, to say it out loud to somebody. Don't hold it in. Don't let it manifest itself or come out in destructive ways, but to just say, hey, this is changing and I really don't like it. This is making me feel anxious. It's making me feel scared. It's making me feel afraid of what the future is based on this change. So to name that out loud. And then the third thing she said to do is to accept the change. Most things that are changing around us, we have no control over. There's nothing we can do to stop this change from happening. So how can we find acceptance of that change, even if it's not something that we agree with, or even if it's something that stirs up those feelings in us? I thought that was so helpful to think through that. And I think the important part for me is that second step, to acknowledge, wow, this change is difficult. I was thinking about all the moves that took place with my daughters back in May, and them living in different cities. And man, I really struggled with the fact that I was afraid of what that meant for them, going to a new city, starting this new life. And as excited as I was for them, there was grief there for me. Gosh, that means my girls are old enough to live on their own in another city. Being able to talk about that with someone was so helpful. And it helped me accept the fact that, no, this is the life I want them to live, even if the change makes me sad or makes me scared. And it was such a helpful way to process that. So I really appreciated how Dr. Kareem talked about that. And she said, in talking about change in the church, that slow change makes the grief easier to bear, because none of us want church to change. We want it to stay the same because that's the church that we joined. That's the church that's meaningful to us. And yet church is constantly changing. So how do we accept that in a way? I shared in one of the worship services past Sunday that she said the best way to do change in a church is moving the piano 1 inch at a time, because you never realize how much something has changed if you do it slowly and incrementally. And that's one of the challenges of leading a church, is how do we help the church continue to change and grow, but in ways that are acceptable to people. That's something we as a staff are constantly working through. But I want to encourage you today to think about what's changing in your life that is causing you anxiety, fear, whatever emotion it's bringing up in you. What is that in your life? To acknowledge that the change is happening, to express your feelings about how the change is impacting you, and then to pray and work on accepting that change, trusting that whatever change we're going through, Christ is with us in the midst of it. Christ never leaves our side. Jesus is walking with us as we negotiate these changes. God is working to bring about good things through whatever change is happening. Focus on what you can control, which is often only yourself, accept the things you can't control, and trust that God is with you in the midst of it. I hope this is helpful to you. It was certainly helpful to me when Dr. Kareem shared what it meant to negotiate all the changes that are happening around us, especially in the church. So my prayer today for you, Crestwood, is that you find peace in the midst of whatever changes are in your life, and that you remember that whatever happens, God is with you always. God bless you, Crestwood.